Back, WNST. Last few relevant baseball conversations that I'm going to have in 2017 before the offseason takes over and we start to talk about the debacle that the Baltimore Orioles are about to become. This guy has been talking about the debacle of the Orioles for, about 25 years now. I've known him as a longtime USA Baseball and USA Today writer. He is a longtime author. He's authored many, many books on baseball, including Castro's Curveball, Red Rain, Summer 68. He has my future job title. I'm just waiting for him to retire so I can become the writer in residence at Johns Hopkins. He is Tim Wendell. He is underscore on his name on Twitter, Tim_Wendell. That's Wendell. He's doing a book on leukemias and cancers, and his brother and my wife is involved, and anybody that's had cancer will be involved in the spring in reading his work. And we welcome him back on here to talk about what is truly your life's passion, right? Like much like my life's passion, baseball, we would both say, has formed both of our lives. And when the World Series comes on, even though it's two National League teams, Tim, I don't know how that happened this year, that we pay attention when the Astros are playing the Dodgers, right?
Oh, very much so. I mean, certainly this is passion. And like you just said, Nestor, I woke up and going, hang on, is this the NLCS or is this the World Series?
Is it 1980 all over again? And is the Astrodome scoreboard going to be jumping,
right.
You know?
Where's Mike Scott and those guys when you need them? But it's bizarre. And I think this is going to be a really intriguing series because, often you've got a certain underdog and you kind of root for them a little bit. Both these teams are really good. I mean, they both won more than 100 games, and I think they've got some great pitching. And frankly, the whole weather forecast has me scratching my head. As one, it used to be, you didn't know this about me, but years and years and years ago, I fought forest fires in Arizona. So I started dialing up what the temps are and what's going on in the world. And I'm seeing my buddy John Thorne, the Major League historian, has said this is going to be the only World Series game since 1975 played in temperatures above 81 degrees. I mean, it's well above that. So we'll see if it impacts any of the teams, but it's going to be a very, very intriguing matchup.
I didn't know you knew John Thorne. I need to know John. I need to get John Thorne on my show.
John's great.
I need to talk to some smart people around here. There's a lot of meat on the bone for this, right? Like, aside from it being two National League teams and all that, and teams that haven't been there, and Houston's never won, and forest fires in L.A., and floods in Houston, and I'm sure there's famine somewhere else at this point. But I look at the series and I say, all the pitching's lined up. You're going to have ones against one, twos against twos. They're pretty healthy. They are fantastic teams against any era or any genre. They have young stars like Correa and Altuve we're going to be seeing for years. This Verlander, Darvish trading deadline thing that usually the trading deadline's a big ado about nothing, right? It's a big buzzkill in the end. Usually you don't see someone really win the way the Astros did when they got Verlander, and certainly for the Zach Britton types, they would look good in the Astros bullpen right now. I mean, we're all going to talk about the Astros bullpen until they actually win because we saw the meltdown in the Bronx last week.
Yeah, very much so. I think if there's any Achilles heel here, it's the Astros bullpen. But then, as you just pointed out, the pitching's matched up, and you wonder, if in doubt, I'd rather have the bullpen. I'd rather have someone like Jansen there, and who could end up being the MVP of this whole thing. But the pitching's matched up, and Keuchel, Verlander. I gave up on Verlander a couple of years ago, and I thought his velocity was down. I profiled him a little bit in High Heat, where I went in search of the fastest pitcher of all time. And at that point, he seemed to be somewhat damaged goods. Here comes David Price. Here comes Strasburg, etc. Man, has this guy reinvented his career. His slider, his curveball look awesome. And what he did to the Yankees was pretty impressive. So the Astros, it'd be great to have a great bullpen. But they may not quite need it if some of these guys like Keuchel and Verlander come through. And especially, anytime you're open up on the road, you get that split in one of those first two games, you're off and rolling. And I think Houston has a really nice home field advantage, as much as you can get maybe in pro sports with the way they're playing back home in Houston.
My dear friend, Tim Wendell joining us here. You can follow him at Tim_Wendell. He's got a book coming out in the spring. All of our fantastic WNST chats today brought to you by our friends at Deli-ish over on Wise Avenue in Dundalk. New York-style deli. They got Reubens, they got corned beef, and legit sandwiches like the Curly Fryer. Sounds like they're curly folks over there. Tasty pickles, they cater. It's delibaltimore.com. Tim, in this series, I guess Kershaw has as much sort of skin in the game as Verlander. Verlander doing it all those years in Detroit. Kershaw being really the best pitcher of the generation right now, and has struggled in October. Now is going to get the ball once, twice, maybe 3 times before next week when it's all over with, and a chance to sort of write his own script after watching Madison Bumgarner be this transcendent post-game pitcher up in San Francisco.
Very much so. And I think the door is open, as you pointed out, Nestor, for Kershaw. I mean, here's the guy, arguably the best pitcher of this generation in the last 10 years or whatever, and yet has struggled. And you look at the extra base hits, I guess he's already given up 6 home runs in postseason play. And the door is open. Can he be the new Bumgarner? Can he be the new Gibson? Can he be the new, even Mickey Lolich? I mean, when you go back through pitchers that we tend to remember, they have to have stepped up in the postseason. And this is where it's right there for Kershaw. I don't know if he's going to. And I'm really, at times he really confuses me in the postseason. A guy that can be this dominant regular season even in the first round or so of the playoffs, and then just gets a little wobbly. But he's set up. He has not been overused to this point, and in a sense, his inning counts down. Dave Roberts has done a great job as manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and so we'll see if some of that can carry over now with Kershaw. But I'm a little skeptical.
Well, and then you also have the Grandersons and the Utleys. There are names here of guys from October's past in various ways. But then there's the Cody Bellingers. And, Justin Turner, we're all making fun of the fact that the Orioles let him get away a number of years ago.
Right.
Maybe it's because these guys play in the middle of the night. Maybe it's because they pretty much ran unchallenged most of the summer, even when they were doing incredible things. Most of it was happening around midnight for us East Coasters around here as we get older. And I'm not up watching the 2 a.m. Sports Center like I was in 1995. I'm too old for that. But this is a real showcase for these Dodgers players that have just been the best team in baseball all year long, and especially during that run in the summer, that you look and say, well, now we're going to pay attention to Yasiel Puig, who has been vilified in various ways and has this sort of colorful thing about him. But there is something about that in October that I sort of want a Reggie Jackson involved in this thing.
Yeah, very much so. I think Puig could certainly be the Reggie Jackson, the new Mr. October of this, Nestor. But I think you point out make a very good point here, is that the Dodgers, they had this incredible run during the summer, but in some ways, at least for, fans in the East, they were kind of off the radar screen a little bit. And then they went into this big losing slump, and when pretty much everything was locked in, and then all of a sudden we were able to flick the switch, and now we're back to our winning ways. And I'm going, this is going to be real interesting, because there are going to be a couple things, not just even who they're playing on the field that are going to test them, but it's going to be prime time. And, here we go. We're starting, it's going to be 8 o'clock starts. And the other thing is, I wouldn't undersell how much of the crowd in Houston is going to be potentially able to move things in certain ways. And I'm not a big home field advantage guy. But at times you look at this and you look at even the way this postseason has played out, home field's been a big edge, and it's been a big edge for Houston. So Dodgers have 2 things here. It's been, I don't want to say a cakewalk, but they've really gone very well throughout the season. But here we are, eyes of the nation, supposedly, looking at them, and also the 3 games potentially they're going to be in Houston. I think that's going to put a lot of stress on the Dodgers.
He is Tim Wendell. He's Tim_Wendell. He writes books about baseball. He is the writer in residence at Johns Hopkins and has written a whole bunch of books about World Series past and, and all the characters we've seen in the World Series. And maybe this is just my Venezuelan blood rubbing off here, but I think it's impossible. Dodgers fans are going to love Altuve by the time the week's over, right? How can you hate on that guy?
Yeah, I think the whole world's going to love Altuve if they don't already. I love this guy. You got to love somebody who's shorter than me. That's,
Man, there's some ghost of Freddie Patek, sobbing in the dugout as a 10-year-old child for me that I look and say, I love Freddie Patek and I love me some Jose Altuve, right?
That's right. I just hope to get these games started. Altuve could do something in the first couple hours and some of the kids across the country can see this guy and he doesn't save everything for later in the evening when everybody's gone to sleep. But no, Altuve is great. And the other thing is, you have to love kind of the Astros in some ways because here's a team that was so bad not that long ago. And yet they got a plan. They pulled it together. They made some really good, pickups and draft picks. And here they are. And the whole fact that Sports Illustrated, put them when they were about the worst team around and predicted they would be in the World Series in 2017, I find a little remarkable. But I think it gives everybody out there hope. If you can have a front office that knows what they're doing, yes, you too can become the Houston Astros of 2017.
For you, with the rest of this mess and everything else going on around baseball, I mean, to the victors go the spoils here, right? So these two teams are feeling good and somebody's going to get their feelings hurt. Then there's what's happened down the road to Dusty Baker in Washington. Mm-hmm. Certainly the Red Sox up in arms despite winning the division and firing John Farrell. This is the headhunting season on even successful managers, let alone those who didn't get to the top of the mountain. And the Nationals thing, it really does underscore how screwed up these rich men who own these teams are at this point in life, right?
Well, I think it kind of points out, Nestor, as you just said, how they think they can fix it all with a flick of the switch. And again, we're back to plans. You and I have talked about plans or lack thereof in front offices many times before. I like Dusty. I covered Dusty quite a bit, when I was at Baseball Weekly at USA Today. I always thought he was very much a straight shooter. I always appreciated that. I felt sometimes in postseason games, maybe a half step behind. I think you have to be much more unconventional than people realize in the postseason, and I think that bit them against the Cubs.
Well, and that's been played out, really in the modern era in these one-game playoffs and the 5-game series, and it's not like it used to be where, you had an ALCS, NLCS, you had 7 games, 5 games, then 7. You didn't have to manage it for a month, and you didn't have to manage pitchers for a month, and you didn't have to be thinking about, well, the season's over on Saturday if I don't win tonight, so I need to work the bullpen far earlier, and I mean, it's an ideology that I've had a hard time accepting until I saw what the Royals did to the Orioles 4 years ago. And I think since then, everyone's trying to turn this into a 5-inning game, right?
Very much so. I mean, look what Cleveland did last year. I mean, look even what the Cubs were able to pull off Wade Davis against the Nats this year.
We're not going to see that from the Astros this week, right? I mean, they're going to be more traditional because they have to be, right?
I think they have to be simply because they don't have the horses there. I mean, they're going to have to ride their starters and better hope these guys go late in the games. But, going back to Baker, I can see the argument why he had to be let go. Yet I'm going to be very, very intrigued by who is managing the Nationals next year because, here we are back to rich guys running teams again. The knee-jerk reaction is, oh, gosh, Dusty Baker got outmanaged by Joe Madden, maybe. But, therefore the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, got to let him go. We're not going to re-sign him, not going to extend the contract, whatever. But the thing is, who's in the wing? I'm like going, okay, I do like Davey Martinez, but what has he done? And it's going to be very, very interesting, not just in D.C., but in Boston, et cetera. Who's going to be running these teams? I don't see where things are thought out. You get rid of somebody, okay, that means who's going to take his place. And right now, I don't really see where there's an heir apparent out there.
It is interesting you bring that part up because I'm sure you've seen the rumors of Buck Showalter to the Phillies this month. And Angelos is never going to let Buck out of a deal. He's never going to let Duquette out of a deal. But all that being said, I don't think he's going to extend anybody in this offseason either. And that's where the pressure comes on to Angelos to say, all right, what's 19 going to look like? And I always hear reports about Angelos' health and his mental stability and his law firm and this and that. But somebody's running the place. I don't think it's his kids at this point. Certainly Showalter's managed to massage this old man's personality to some way and also have a pretty good crop of of baseball players here the last 5 or 6 years, and some overachievers, and some Miguel Gonzalez's, and some Wei and Chen's, and some deals left over from McPhail that's made this era smell good here, Tim. But we're now getting into the era where it's starting to smell like 3-day-old milk, and we're going into this offseason with everyone, including Adam Jones. I mean, Buck, the real cornerstones of what this has been, and yet we don't know what the future is going to look like because they have to give Scope a lot of money if they're going to keep him around. I don't think there's any way they're going to keep Machado around at this point, and that may be tied to Scope to some degree. And they only have a handful of good baseball players right now, and they have a handful of other guys on the other side. The Chris Davis is making a lot of money, the Mark Trumbos, and the fact that the Yankees and the Red Sox look like they are going to be very, very substantial for the next 24 to 36 months. This is a real turning point for the Orioles organization, and no one historically has done this worse than Peter Giangelos.
Well, yeah, I think you can certainly make a strong argument for that, Nestor. And it's interesting what we're seeing is it used to be, okay, who are the new guys we're going to bring in? It used to be like the free agent market, at least among players and such. Okay, who's available this
who are we going after? We're going after, right? Yeah.
I think the more pivotal question, and I think it goes into managers, certainly what happened in D.C. with Dusty Baker, et cetera. It's not so much who we go after. Yeah, okay, that's certainly important. But who are we going to extend? Who's our core? What are we? And I think the teams that are doing real well, you can make the argument both of the teams in the World Series have done this very well. They made a decision. It wasn't so much we need to go out and get this guy or that guy. It's more like we have these guys. These are the couple guys we're going to build, we're going to extend, we're going to invest in. And that's become, I think, the real conundrum right now with a lot of teams. It's not so much, let's go out and open up the checkbook and see what we can sign. It's more internal and doing the real due diligence and deciding, okay, he's our guy. Maybe he's not. And I think that extends all the way to the dugout with the manager right now.
Tim Wendell can be reached at Tim_Wendell. This extended WNST Intelligent Chat, all brought to you by Costas Inn. Good enough for the Today Show and my mom. Fat crabs, cold beer, big crab cakes. The legend continues. They call it Sparrow's Point. I'll call it Dundalk. It's CostasInn.com. It's on the east side, and they've been friends of ours for years. We want you to go see them. Tim, in watching this World Series sort of unfold, looking at the offseason, I guess you could say the Yankees really were still the biggest story of the year. Even though the Dodgers or the Astros are going to have their parade, the Yankees' resurgence and how quickly it happened, and really what it means not just for the Orioles. I mean, I had Greg Zahn on talking. It means a lot for Toronto, it means a lot for Tampa, but it means a lot for baseball. This Dodgers-Yankees thing that everyone willed and believed was going to happen before the weekend until the Astros had something to say about it when they got home over the weekend. It would have been nice for baseball, but I think even nicer for baseball is the fact that the Yankees are going to be a bad guy here again soon. Aaron Judge is cute right now, and the Sanchez kid and Severino. We'll learn to hate them just like we did Pettit and Mariano and all those other Jeter. I mean, who was a better guy, a better person, a better ambassador than Jeter? He had pinstripes on. We don't like him very much. But the Yankees are back, and they weren't away long, were they?
No, they weren't away long. That was scary, wasn't it? I mean, it was like. It's like Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I know they're going to win. Just don't let them win this year. I know at some point they're going to ride the white horse around up there in the Bronx. I just, and I think that's going to be the thing for the next couple of years. It's going to get heavy for them because they kind of blew it, right? I mean, they had a 3-2 lead. They had reinvigorated everything and then went down to Houston and couldn't score a run.
Right. But even though when they lost, after blowing the 3-2 lead, what went flashed through my mind was the Atlanta Braves back in 91, and I did a book on this down the last pitch and how, that was a young team, a team that wasn't expected to do much, had gone worse the first, etc. And that so much galled them. It was something they talked about the next year at spring training, etc. And that started the epic run, I believe, of 14 straight seasons that the Braves were in the playoffs. And I found myself thinking of the same thing with the Yankees. They were, I think, a shade too young, especially to go into an environment like Houston and win the deciding game. Next year, I think they very much could be. And, it's going to start. Man, you look at the talent on that team. And if they get a little bit more resolve, it gets scary.
Well, it's not only the talent on the
Braves.
team; it's the money. It's looking at Bryce Harper and Manny Machado and saying they can get both of those guys if they really want to. You know, if they want to.
You look at Harper hitting in that ballpark with a short right field porch. Oh my, that gets crazy.
I bet he's never spent a minute thinking about that at all. Right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, that's also a big part of this offseason, too, with the Machados and the deals that can happen and Bryce Harper and, you know, who's going to re-up and who's not, because this time next year, all hell breaks loose with the star power and the money and bidding and, you know, the 8 or 9 teams that have a lot of money, and the Phillies are kind of sitting out in the weeds. We talked about them with Buck. They've been rumored to Machado for 5 years now. So, you know, knowing all of that, next offseason is going to be a real battle zone with money and players and contracts, I think.
I agree. I think it even starts earlier. I think it starts with the trading deadline next season, July of 2018. And what's going to tip hands here a little bit, you're going to see the teams that have a plan. I don't know. You know, they're going to say, we can't re-sign him. We choose not to re-sign him. Harper down here in D.C. is going to be a real interesting case. I mean, every day that they let that go by, I think the money just goes up and up and up. And so you may see some pretty big names potentially dealt simply because clubs have said, no, you know, we can't handle it. We can't do it. So there could be some really interesting hired guns for the second half of the season next year. You know, it's more so even than, say, Verlander or somebody like that has proven to be this year.
Tell me about your book, Tim. I know it's coming out in the spring, and it has an incredible cancer story, very near and dear to your heart and near and dear to my heart, given my wife's leukemia survival. And unfortunately, your brother left us a number of years ago, and it's taken you a long time to sort of process it, research it, and talk about it. And I know you spent a lot of time at Hopkins and trying to be around smarter people and telling their stories. And I know your book has a hell of a story to tell, Tim.
Yeah, it's pretty much, thanks, Nestor. It's called Cancer Crossing. The brother, his doctors, and the quest to cure childhood leukemia. And we hear a lot of talk about moonshots, cancer moonshots. We had one. It was in the 60s, 70s. And as you said, it's taken me a long time to kind of come around to this, but spending time with these doctors, and you guys have done it, obviously, in your own way and such, I really appreciate how they think. And I think we, in a lot of ways, need more of this type of philosophy. I really like how they just kind of work clinical trial to clinical trial. And a lot of these doctors I'm interviewing in Cancer Crossings are in their late 80s now. One's even 91, still working 3 days a week at Mount Sinai. Their sense of purpose, I think, sometimes put me to shame. And it really, I learned a lot by hanging with them. And we just got a great blurb from Ken Burns for the book. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he calls it a riveting book and kind of really spells out in a sense, how proactive these folks were. What a lot of people don't know about Ken is he lost his mom to cancer way back when I believe he was 15 or 16 years old, which
that shapes your life. That takes your life on a different path, right?
Yeah, and pretty much that's what took his path into doing documentaries. And as he told me one time, I'm in the business of trying to recreate the past. And you look at the recent Vietnam series, they go back to Civil War, baseball, etc. That's what the man does. And so to have him in my corner, I'm always appreciative. I mean, I've learned a lot just by watching him over the years. So that'll be out in the spring. And Dean Smith, a longtime Dean John Smith, who born and raised in Baltimore, now with Cornell Books, is the mover and shaker, the editor behind it. I'm really happy I fell in with him. So, we'll talk more about this maybe when the book's finally out.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a release date or just spring at this point?
April. And even though books be ready pre-order, I think as early as, say, Thanksgiving, I think people will be able to get the book. We just got the cover done, so people will be able to get the book in February, March. And I appreciate all your guys' help, your insights, certainly Jen's, et cetera, because it's a whole... What people don't realize, and you know it as well as anybody, is about 50% of us will have a family member or certainly a dear friend impacted in some way by cancer in our lifetime. And so that's what a lot of this book, Cancer Crossings, was about kind of teasing that out and, where's the hope? How do we stay resilient, et cetera?
He is Tim Wendell, Tim_Wendell. That's Wendel. He is the writer in residence, holding down my job until I get old enough to take it to Johns Hopkins. You can find him out on the web. The book is Cancer Crossings. That's coming out in the spring. And, of course, you said it was coming out in April. I'm like, yeah, the beginning of baseball season. But that's not true, Tim, because they're starting in March. So it's coming out after opening day. Hey, we'll stay in touch here in the offseason. It's going to be interesting with the Orioles. And I always love to get your insights on all things baseball. Buckle up and, get a little nap in the middle of the afternoon so you can stay up late with these, okay? It's going to be a hot one, as they say out in Los Angeles.
That's right. Oh, I meant to say congratulations to you on your high school.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's sweet. That's awesome.
I've actually got the award over my shoulder now. I'm trying to figure out how to frame it and make it larger than it actually is. It's only 5x7, but I'm trying to make it 11x14.
And I too still have my high school jacket.
Does it fit?
Go see if it still fits. Yeah, I think it does.
Well, there you go. Then, you know what? If it still fits on the eve of my 33rd high school reunion, I'm probably doing something okay.
You're doing great.
I'm eating some vegetables. Tim, always great to have you on. We'll check in soon. I'm doing yoga too. He is Tim Wendell, Tim_Wendell, the writer in residence at Johns Hopkins and longtime baseball historian, author, and my friend. And he makes my show better, which I appreciate. Intelligent conversation around here. WNST is the home for all things Coppin State University. Eagles basketball all winter long. Juan Dixon, they're all going to be here. Go visit them at CoppinStateSports.com and get over and see their beautiful gym over on the northwest side of downtown. Speaking of the east side of downtown, that's my side of town. Baseball. When I think of baseball, I think of G&A, Coney Island Hot Dogs in Highlandtown, because that's where I used to get my hot dogs before I went to Memorial Stadium. Best hot dogs in the world are there, GNARestaurant.com, and you can always stop in for breakfast. Tell Andy and the folks over there we said hello. Next time you're in Highlandtown, think G&A. Hot dogs of Highlandtown. Coach Billick's on the wall over there as well. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. The buyatoyota.com audio vault is there for you 24 hours a day for anything that you miss here. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, watching football, baseball, hockey, and soon basketball. I know the NBA is kicked off as well. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.